Cindy Erics here with Erics Environmental Consulting, and I wanted to share some information with you. Your remediator received your mold protocol report, and I wanted to share some information about the report and the remediation process. Sometimes people have a little bit of a hard time understanding, but we really strive here at Erics Environmental to bring you a report that's very understandable. So I'm going to take you through the report real quick as I can. The first page essentially has a picture of your property on the front and the address. And the next page is going to have some information about the conditions at the time of inspection, perhaps the outside temperature and humidity, the inside temperature and humidity. And sometimes we find elevated humidity in the home where we'll usually try to put that in red and make a comment next to it that says too high if it's too high. And we encourage you, regardless of whether your humidity is too high, we encourage you to go to the end of the report. It's probably several pages from the last section. It'll have an indoor air quality and humidity guide to help you understand controlling humidity in your home all year long, because in our region of the Southeast, we have high humidity in the winter frequently when it's cool and we don't really feel the humidity. And sometimes before you know it, it catches up with you, and that humidity has caused mold problems. So we don't want you to have mold problems. We want to try to prevent. And you could go to my website or my YouTube channel. The website's indoor-air-quality-matters.com, and you can there's a bunch of videos on there to just educate you about different aspects of mold remediation, prevention, so forth. We're big on prevention, right? We really want to help to prevent. So you'll have the conditions, some disclaimer there about that we don't move furniture. We don't, because there's too much liability. If we move something and it breaks, then we're responsible for fixing it. Okay. And so if anything needs to be removed, then it needs to be removed by you or your contractor. A lot of times that would involve heavy couches, or because we don't want to move things that'll scrape the floor and damage the floor either, right? Even if they're light. So, but appliances, refrigerator, dishwasher, washer, dryer, things like that, right? So the next section, you're going to have an inspection summary, and that's just going to tell you like generally what we saw, and then we'll integrate a little bit of the labs with it. So if there were some really bad molds in some of those locations where we observed things, then we'll mention that in that location also. And we'll also generally be commenting here about some of those things that we observed that are going to have to be remediated, removed, cleaned, etc. And so the next section is going to be your testing. So we almost always will swab test, and additionally we'll do air quality testing in an air sample. It's not reliable, which is why we do the swabs. Okay, so we take surface samples around the house of your HVAC return to see. We're basically looking for heavy accumulation of common mold spores or the water damaged building molds that are very nasty and toxic, and you don't want to have any of those in your building. And so if we do find those, if we find the common molds in high numbers, then that would warrant having the system cleaned. But have HVAC contractor look at it to see if the ducts can be cleaned. Some can, some can't, depending upon the type of ducts, the age of the ducts, and the extent of the mold inside the ducts, which, by the way, we're having a lot of problems with that. Humidity and moisture inside ducts the past like 8 years or so, with the new system is becoming more efficient. They're producing more humidity. So by following that indoor air quality humidity guide and monitoring your humidity at all times, you'll know if you have an increase in humidity and something that's starting to go on, and you'll catch it early by following those guidelines. So this has the sampling. We have boxes checked. There's the two categories of molds. Basically, one is the common molds that are found commonly in the outside air, and then the others are only found in the outside when it's like buried under decayed material, basically, or water damage. So The next page would be your mold remediation protocol page, and this will describe what containment is. And I really want to mention here while I'm talking about containment, containment means that the remediator seals off a area that they're working in so that when they start opening up and removing building materials, the mold spores that are there, they'll just be released big time into the air. We don't want them going into your HVAC system. We don't want them going outside of that space. So the containment needs to stay quite sealed to the floor and to the ceiling, and it may damage your ceiling. So you're probably going to have some ceiling patch repairs involved in your mold remediation. Almost every job does, okay? It's just the nature of it. You cannot use a good enough adhesive and not end up with some ceiling Mars, basically. And so just expect that, okay? But the containment is designed to keep the mold inside that area. There'll be a HEPA air scrubber on the outside of the containment. There's a zipper door for the workers to come and go, and only they should be allowed to come and go from that space. And there'll be a HEPA air scrubber inside the containment with a dehumidifier, which will keep the air clean. And frequently, if it's possible, negative air will be set up. And you'll see at the very end of the report, you'll see diagrams that show what negative air look like. And negative air is basically a HEPA air scrubber with a tube on it that takes the air and exhausts it to the outside. But frequently, when that negative air is set up, it's drawing from those plastic walls of containment, and it'll put pressure on the adhesive and holding it to the floor and holding it to the ceiling. So sometimes they'll put a cut opening in it and put a HEPA filter in that cut opening to allow some movement of air, but there's a HEPA filter in the way, okay? So don't ever enter that space, and don't let anybody else enter that space, even if it's a contractor, because this is what happens, frequently happens. Somebody comes from another location, they've been someplace else that day. They've got mold spores on them. They don't even know it. They don't even know they were in a building that had mold. And then they come in and they walk in, they want to just see what's going on because they're curious. And then they bring those mold spores in. And depending upon what phase of the project is, it could cost the mold remediator a failed test. Now, about 25% of the time, the first test will fail. First test inspection will fail. It's just the nature of mold inspection. So just kind of expect that that's a possibility. But we don't want it failing because somebody breached the containment when they were asked not to. Okay, it's very, very, very important. It's also very important if the HVAC system is shut down that that the humidity be controlled in the entire property. Right. So if any areas affecting the property that where you have it's the air's no longer being conditioned, meaning it's no longer humidity, it's no longer being controlled. Dehumidifiers must be in those spaces. You really want like 40 to 50, 40 to 55, 55 max of humidity. And so you'll see by the indoor air quality guide that that is recommended even if you don't have a mold remediation going on. Expect hidden damages, okay? With mold, frequently what happens is we as assessors, inspectors, and site technicians can see the mold on the outside of the drywall. But once it's opened, which is only going to be opened under containment, once it's opened, frequently it goes farther back, which you'll see in the report. It says go 2 feet beyond any visible mold that the technician sees once they start pulling it. So usually the remediator will take into account a few feet anyway, but sometimes there's other events that have happened in the past that maybe nobody knows about. This is why the history is really important, by the way, because if there was a prior loss that wasn't reported or wasn't handled right, and you have mold you don't even know you have it, but it's there. It's behind your sheetrock up against your base trim, for instance. That's a very common place we see it. And it's farther down and farther down. There may be more coming out than you expected. At that point, the remediator will stop and talk to you about it and say, look, we've got more damage and we have to go farther. They can take pictures and send them to us, and we'll take a look at them and see whether we need to come out or not. We'll try not to come out because we need to charge when we come out. It takes time to do that. So, but we'll try to avoid doing that. And so very frequently, we could do this by the photographs because we've been to the property before. We have photographs. We know what it looks like. And sometimes we could just do it without without coming to do another inspection. So you've put your trust in your remediator, and make sure that, just make sure you take a look at the protocol and you understand what it says to be done. If you want to understand the labs, go towards the end of the report. I think it's probably around page 22. Give or take. Sometimes it's page numbers change based on how much detail and how many pages we take up and the observations and things like that. So just take a look back there at the expected, like what we expect when we come back to inspect it and test it before any new building materials have been installed, before the equipment's pulled. Have air scrubbers and dehumidifiers need to stay on site until we've come, inspected, tested, made sure all the mold's gone, sent the samples to the laboratory, and given you a written report of clearance saying it's good to go. You can take down those barriers because we don't want to cross-contaminate your home. Okay, so take a look towards the end of the report. Like I said, around page 22, the expectations. You're going to see that, nochatomium, stachybotrys, Memonelia, fusarium, trichodoma, alternaria. Those are the water damaged building molds. Penicillium aspergillus is also a water damaged building mold, but it frequently comes up in water damage. But we're looking for, I think, not more than like 1,000 spores, or just see, you can compare all the spore counts on that. We don't want no dust or debris, because if there's dust or debris, that means the surface wasn't cleaned. Mold spores settle in dust and debris. So just know, be informed with your remediator. Have conversations about what to expect. Your property will be disrupted during this process. It just cannot be helped. It's better if you're not there. But I know for some people it's really hard. And then sometimes, they can section off the house to do, or the office building, whichever it is, they can section it off and do it in sections. But it's really, really hard when people are occupying the space. They could usually get the job done much quicker and at less cost if they don't have to deal with ins and out, people in and out and in and out and out, and not knowing what they're bringing into the property too. So if you have any questions about our protocol, please feel free to contact us by email or by phone, 850-556-8888. Cindy Eriks. I'm the owner. I'm the founder. I've been in business in Tallahassee for over 32 years, and we care about each customer and each project, and we want to see that all the mold has been removed. All the mold has been removed, and that all the costs associated with doing that are discussed up front to whatever degree they can be. Like I said, the hidden damages will add some expense. So just expect a little bit of extra expense. But you can also go on website, indoorairqualitymatters.com. Feel free to send us a message through the website. Well, God bless you and have a great day. Thank you for listening all the way through. I appreciate it.